Hello, I'm Laura Nelkin. I'm a knitwear designer. I live in upstate New York in the Finger Lakes region, and I have been wanting to learn how to do beaded crochet forever. Once I learned how to do beaded crochet, I wanted to come up with something that could be a cuff and also be a shawl cuff. So you could wear it on your wrist, or you could wear it to hold a cowl or a shawl in place. And I did it with Sprang cuff. What is really fun about Sprang cuff is you do a beaded crochet tube and then you put a piece of leather through that tube and attach a magnetic clasp so you can make it a variety of sizes. Bead crochet is completely addictive to do once you get into it. I will say when I started bead crochet, I was a little confused. I didn't quite know what was going on. I went to the library and I got a bunch of books. I tried to learn from those books. It didn't totally make sense. I found some videos on YouTube. They all kind of conflicted with each other, so I was confused about what to do. And then I stumbled across some videos from Ann Benson that I'll link below that I found to be the most helpful videos. So I'm going to be showing you my method of bead crochet and the tips and tricks that work for me, but I definitely suggest watching her videos as well. It all started because one day I was on Etsy looking at beaded kits, and I found this kit from Lithuania where all of the beads were pre-strung on your yarn for you. And under the camera, I'm just showing you, these are the directions that I got with this kit. I got this piece of paper that said 14 beads in a row, and that was it. Totally. Let me show you what it looked like when I got it. So I got basically all of these beads strung onto yarn. I might have showed these to you in a live at some point. And I had no idea what to do with this giant mess of beads pre-strung. And this kit is supposed to make this really cool kind of like animal print. It's got a magnetic clasp that the tube fits into on the bottom. And you can see that now that I've learned how to do bead crochet, I have learned how to do it. This is size 11 beads, which are much smaller. The Sprang cuff, which I will be showing you how to knit, has size 8 beads on it. But once you learn how to work with the size 8 beads and the Sprang cuff, you will have the skills to go ahead and do a more complicated kit like I just showed you. And I'll give you a link to that below because it is a really interesting technique and fun to be able to knit like a giant beaded crochet rope like that. So I'm obsessed, and I think you might be obsessed too. And the first thing that I want to do to get you going with beaded crochet is to show you the materials that are in your kit. All right. Let me show you the materials you need for making a Sprang cuff. You can gather these materials on your own, or maybe you've gotten a kit from me. You will see that you have beads in 4 different colors, A, B, C, and D. These are all size 8 Japanese seed beads. They're all really uniform in size to each other, which is really helpful when you're first learning how to do bead crochet. Colors A, B, and C, you use about 100 beads of each of those colors. And then bead D, depending on which version of the cuff you do, you want about 210 beads. If you're shopping for beads, it's helpful to know that there are about 40 beads to the gram for Japanese size 8 seed beads. So that should be a helpful bit right there. The other thing you'll need is a tool for stringing your beads onto your nylon cord. I like to use a dental floss threader. You can also use, I'll put that in my hand so you can kind of see it. You can also use a large eye beading needle. Then you will need some Ceylon bead cord. Everyone who gets one of my kits gets a big spool of this. You can make a bunch of Sprang cuffs with one of these spools. This was the easiest way to buy it, and I didn't feel like winding it off, so everybody got a spool. And then you will need some 3mm round leather cord, and that's for going through the inside of your tube. And finally, you'll need a magnetic clasp that fits onto that 3mm cord. The other things that you'll need that are not included in the kit is you will need some E6000 glue, and we'll talk about that towards the end of the video when you're finishing your Sprang cuff. And quite importantly, you will need a crochet hook because this is beaded crochet. And I have a few different crochet hooks to show you. I'm just going to kind of swoop everything over to the side while I show you these crochet hooks. I used about a 1.5 millimeter crochet hook. You might want to play around and decide that you like a crochet hook a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller. When I used a smaller crochet hook, I had a hard time getting into each stitch underneath each loop as I was working the beaded crochet, and a little bit bigger things were just kind of too loosey-goosey and not tight enough for me. And so these crochet hooks that I'm showing you right now in my hand are all 1.5 millimeter crochet hooks, but they're all a little bit different. And I find with crochet hooks that we find the crochet hook that is our favorite crochet hook to us. And what is kind of annoying, but also kind of amusing at the same time, is these are all 1.5 millimeter crochet hooks. This top one says it's a US 7. This middle one says it's a size 6. And this bottom one says it's a number 2. So that might be that this is Japanese and this is US sizing and this is UK sizing. I am not totally sure. But what I suggest you do with crochet hooks is go by the millimeter size and not any kind of like number nomenclature. And anywhere that you're looking for crochet hooks, they'll tell you the millimeter size as well. Many of you might find that in your notions box or in with your hooks and needles that you have a crochet hook this size. I believe that this US size, let me look at it. I think it's the US size 7 one was my grandma's, and I found it with my grandma's hooks. And it's one of my favorites because it has a really sharp tip on the end, which makes it easy to get into the stitches. As you're working this, if you get really into it and you're doing a fair amount of bead crochet and you notice that your hand is cramping, this hook, which I believe is made by Chowgu, is really nice because it has kind of this flat surface to hold onto instead of just that round bit where there isn't as much to hold onto. I've also seen at some bigger box craft stores these holders that you can put onto your steel crochet hook that make it so you have something a little bit bigger to hold on to. So if that is a problem, you could go ahead and get one of those. I was able to find crochet hooks at, I think, my local Joann's. I couldn't find one at my local knitting store in this size, but I did find one at Joann's, and then you can find them online as well if you don't have one on hand. So I think that's important to just do that little talk about crochet hooks. And now that we've discussed that, the next thing that we are going to do is talk about stringing your beads onto your beading thread and a decision that you get to make about which design you want to do. Okay, so the first thing that you need to do is string your beads onto your thread. And when you go to do that, you'll see in the Sprang cuff pattern that there are 3 different options for stringing on your beads. And that is because I could not stop with my ideas for all the different ways that you could string your beads onto your thread for doing the bead crochet. I will tell you that the easiest version is the diagonal stripes version. The diagonal stripes, which I'm wearing on my wrist, you will see that it goes around and around in this kind of helical stripe. And it's really easy because of the way that the beads are worked from row to row. You know if you are missing, like skipping a bead or not when you're working this. So even if you don't choose to work the diagonal stripes, I suggest starting by stringing on, like, I don't know, 10 or so repeats of the diagonal stripes. You have extra beads and tons of extra thread in your kit to play around and just get an idea of how the bead crochet works before you go to string on all of your beads to do your entire tube. So once you've kind of done like an inch or so of this and you've strung on those beads and you get it, and you'll definitely be like ripping it out and doing it a few times before you get into the groove with it. Once you do that, Then you can decide to either string on more, like rip it out and string on more, or you can leave that, set it aside, and then string on your beads for your actual cuff. And to show you all three of these cuffs so you get an idea of your three choices, I just want to make sure I tell you the right one for each one. So this one right here is the diagonal stripes. This one is gradient one, and you can see that it has the darker color or the D bead on each end, and then kind of gradienting in between each of the A, B, and C colors. Or you can do gradient two, which just has the dark on each end, and then the A, B, and C right there in the middle. The C bead is the crystal bead, if that helps you kind of get that clear. You can mix up those colors if you want. I had fun naming them for you, but it's really up to you which you want to be A, which you want to be B, and which you want to be C. So you've got the decision to make of which of those patterns you want to do, and then you will string on all of your beads. And for those of you that have never strung on beads with a dental floss threader, I want to show you how easy that is to do. So you'll just take your cord right here and you'll put it through the loop on your dental floss threader, and you'll give yourself a nice long tail so it doesn't bounce out. And then you'll just grab some beads and go ahead and take your floss and go ahead and pick up 2 beads or more, and then just put them onto your yarn like that. And obviously you'll be following the pattern for stringing on the beads for the design that you choose. I've got that fun diagonal stripes on my cord right now, getting ready to show you how to do bead crochet. So let's do that. Hi everyone, let's bead crochet a tube together. I'm going to start at the very beginning. I'm going to try to go slow so that you can really see what I'm doing. No, in the beginning when you start this, you'll probably be trying and ripping a few times. Try to come back to it day after day so that your hands can build muscle memory, because it will get easier and easier to do. That's what I did. It took me about a week of trying some every day before it just kind of clicked and came together. It's not that challenging to do. It just might be new for your hands. So the first thing that you're going to do is start with a slip knot, and you just want to leave yourself a long enough tail so that you have something to weave in with afterwards, but you don't want that tail to be too long. The next trick that I will say is this first part of the bead crochet, when you're making the foundation chain, is you want to make it loosely. If you make it tightly, it's really hard to get into that first round, and it will be frustrating and you won't enjoy it. So I'll show you my tricks for doing it loosely. You'll see that I've got 10 beads up here on my yarn, and I've got 1 bead already slipped up and touching my hook. And now I'm going to go ahead and make a chain by wrapping the yarn around the hook. And then I'm going to cover that bead because I'm going to kind of pinch and pull down a little bit as I pull that thread through, making the first chain. And what happens when I pull down a little bit is it's making sure that that is not too tight. And now I'm going to slip another bead up, and I'm going to wrap the yarn around, and I'm going to pull down, but I'm going to try to not cover it so you can see what I'm doing here. And I'm just turning my hook down and pulling it through the chain. Again, trying to make that not too tight as I do that. So I'm going to wrap the yarn around, gonna kind of pull down to make that stitch loose right there, or that chain loose. And I'm going to continue on like that until I have done that with 10 beads total, because this is a 10 bead crochet tube. Okay, I have finished my 10 bead crochet chain. You can see that I tried to keep it pretty loose. And part of keeping it loose is to make it easier to go in on that first round, because the first round of most stitching, whether it is knitting or crochet, is the hardest. And the second reason it's loose is because if you make that too tight, then when you go to join this into the round, it might be too tight for the leather cord to fit through. So once you have that chain, you're going to kind of turn things so that you're looking at the bottom of the chain right there. And then what you're going to do with your crochet hook is go underneath both of those loops, underneath that first pink bead, the first pink bead that you strung on. And then you're going to kind of flip things around so that the crochet hook is to the left of the bead, and that bead is all the way to the back of the crochet hook. And this is to get yourself all set up to join that into the round right there. Let's make sure you can see that really clearly. And now what I'm going to do is go down my cord and grab one bead. I've got a few right there, but I'm just going to grab one bead, and I've slid it up, and you can see I'm kind of used my finger to push it down so it's all the way to the back. And then I'm going to grab my yarn and pull it through both of those loops. And so I've joined myself into the round, and I'm ready to continue on like that. So now I'm going to go into the next chain with a bead, and you'll see I went to the left of that bead, and I'm going to push that bead down so that it's to the back of the hook. And then I'm going to go ahead and slip up one bead, and you'll see as I slide up that bead and bring the yarn over, it's kind of crossing over that other yarn right there. It might be a little bit hard to see, but then I am pulling that through both of those stitches. And now I am going to go into the next chain to the left of that bead. I'm going to push that bead down and to the right. I'm going to go get another bead, and I am going to slip that bead up, bring the yarn over, and pull it through both of those loops. I'm afraid what happens as I get into this is I get so comfortable doing it that I forget to slow down and go really slow for you all so that you can see what's happening. Remember that you have controls in YouTube to speed things up and slow things down if you need to. So now I am going to go into this next chain with a bead. I went to the left of that bead. I pushed that bead down right there. I am going to go down my cord and get some more beads. I only want one pushed up right there. I bring my yarn over the hook so it kind of crosses over, and then I pull the yarn through. And I'm continuing on like that, going into the next chain with a bead. This one's a little tight, you could see that. And pushing that bead down, sliding up a bead, bringing my yarn over. You'll see that I've been using my right index finger to kind of hold that bead in place. The first round is the hardest. As you're doing this, I would say you want to work 3 or 4 rounds pretty, like without putting it down, just until you get things established and comfortable. It's not as easy to pick up and put down in these first few rounds. Going into that next stitch, sliding it to the back. The maneuver is the same once you get into it. One of the things I loved in Ann Benson's video is she said, I think I'm quoting her correctly, there is no room for interpretation in bead crochet. You must obey. I love that. Like, that is the one way. So around the house in the last few weeks, we've just been like, there's no room for interpretation. You must obey. So I'm going in, pushing that bead to the back, sliding up a bead, bringing the yarn around. And you'll see as I'm getting more comfortable, I'm able to do things in a smooth move instead of kind of breaking it down into the parts. So I'm going into that next chain, moving the bead to the back, slipping that bead up, bringing the yarn over in one smooth move, and then bringing the yarn through both of those loops. The other thing you might get more comfortable doing as you get into this is being able to pull your new yarn loop through both of those loops at once instead of doing one and then the other. So I'm actually on the last bead of this round. What a party right here. I'm going through, pulling it through, and pulling it through again. And now I'm just continuing around. So I'm doing the diagonal stripes. And one of the reasons I suggested doing the diagonal stripes as your first pattern to try with is that you'll see that the stitch you're going into, or the chain you're going into with the bead, is the same color as the bead you're sliding up. So it's really easy to know if you are doing things correctly or not. One trick that I have is if you find that things are too tight and you're feeling kind of frustrated, grab a bigger hook so that your stitches are a little bigger. And then once you get more comfortable, you can go down in hook size, but making it so that you're not kind of jamming your hook in the beginning. That might be a piece that is frustrating for you. So you're just going to continue around. You're doing the exact same maneuver. You don't really have a beginning or end of the round, except that you can count and look at your beads to see where you are. And I'm going to show that to you after this stitch right here. So if I kind of pull to the side so you can see what's going on right here, you can see that I've got 3 crystal beads right there and 3 of that lavender bead, and then only 2 of that dark purple, because that is the next bead that I was going to be doing. Okay, I want to show you one thing on this tube that I think is important to see now that we've kind of grooved along with our bead crochet a bit. Is I am ready to work into this next bead. And if you look at every bead on the top of this tube right now, you're going to see, whoops, there goes my crochet hook. You're going to see that they're sitting kind of horizontally. The bead is going this way. The hole in the bead is going this way. I'm losing my words here. Now, if I take the crochet hook and I go into that next loop right there with the bead on it, and I move the bead down all the way to the right, you will see all of a sudden now that that bead is sitting vertically and the hole looks like this. So beads that you've just placed, the hole looks like this. And then once you've manipulated them into place, when you go to slide up the next bead, they are sitting vertically. And that's kind of like the big trick to bead crochet, because I'm going to go ahead and slide that up and pull them through. And now you'll see that all of these beads in this line have their hole sitting vertically, and just the beads on the top row, like the last round that you've worked, have their holes sitting horizontally. So if you ever kind of get confused and you think something doesn't look right, what you want to do is look for the orientation of the bead hole, and that might help you get back on track. So I'm kind of, you'll see that one just kind of moved all by itself. I'm going into that, I'm pushing the bead down, I'm slipping up the next bead, and I'm pulling things through. This next bead, the hole is horizontal. I go into it, I push it down. It is magically vertical, and it is in place to get locked right there. So I bring the yarn over and pull it through both of those stitches going around. Now, when you have used up all the yarn all the beads, and you are ready to finish off, you're just going to work one round without any beads. And the way that you're going to do that is go into the next chain that has a bead on it, manipulate that bead so that the hole is sitting vertically and it's all the way on the right leg right there, and then grab your yarn and pull it through without any bead slipped up. And you're just going to continue to do that all the way around, remembering that if you work that too tightly, like if you get too excited about finishing, you might not be able to fit your leather through. One thing that you can do that I forgot to say is if you're worried about your leather not fitting, every so often you can go ahead and grab your leather and pull it through. Some people actually like to have their leather to hold on to and then work around with the leather there. I actually find that kind of annoying. It's like one more thing in my way. So I don't like to work with the leather already there as I'm working around and around doing that. So you're just going to finish off the top of your tube by doing what you've been doing all along, but not slipping up any beads while you do that. And then you will, when you've made it all the way around, cut your yarn, pull it through that last loop, and then weave in your ends at the top of the bottom. And then we'll go on to finishing with the leather cord and magnetic clasp. Please feel free to ask any questions about this. I know it's a lot and it's a new skill for many of us. All right, let's say you are all done with your tube and you are ready to finish it off and put that leather cord through it. I have a tube right down here on the table ready to go to be finished. What I want to tell you about this E6000 is that this says jewelry and bead, and the only reason it says jewelry and bead is because it came with these little disposable tips. And if I open it up, you'll see it's a tip that you can put on the end of your glue so that you can squeeze the glue out and squeeze the glue right into the hole of your magnetic clasp on each end. I'm not going to glue on set right now, so this is going to be like fake gluing, but we'll just pretend together. I just don't want to get glue everywhere over my rock. So I just have a feeling like it could just go very wrong very quickly. So if you have some E6000 in your cabinet at home with your other super glues, it's exactly the same as the jewelry and bead. You don't need to go out and buy the jewelry and bead. All you'll do is take like a toothpick or a Q-tip and use that to apply your glue. I just thought these tips were pretty cool. It's hard to keep them clean, so they're pretty much disposable after you use them because the glue kind of solidifies in there, but that's pretty obvious. So what you're going to do when you're done with your tube is take your leather cord and cut it an inch longer than you want your cuff to be. And that is for two reasons. One reason is because some of it is going to end up inside of your clasp right here. And the other reason is because this tube is bulky, it needs to sit out from your wrist a little bit. And if you make that leather cord and cut it too short, then your cuff will be too small and it won't fit around your wrist. So make sure to cut this at least an inch longer than your wrist is. And then you're going to take it and thread it through the tube. Now, if you find that you're having a hard time getting it through your tube, which I did with one of my tubes, what I did was before I went and trimmed my entire piece of leather, I checked it to make sure it could go through the tube. And since it was having a hard time, I just kind of shaved down the ends and cut it so that it was at a point and smaller at the tip. And then I was easily able to get it all the way through the tube. So that's a trick if you're having a hard time getting this through the tube. I know when I was working my first tube, I was testing and putting the leather through every so often. And that really helped me as well to make sure that I could get it through. And then once you have it through, if you did taper your end a little bit, cut it off so that it is perfectly flat. And that is really important because when you go to glue this clasp on, you want to try to have that flat end of your leather cord kind of bottoming out at the end of that clasp so that you get a really good join. So what you're going to do once you know you're good and everything's fitting on there and you can feel it's all nice and tight is you're going to take some glue and put it inside the magnetic clasp, and then you're going to take a little bit of glue and put a small ball onto the end of the leather. Don't do too much glue onto the end of your leather, otherwise it's going to kind of zhuzh out, would be the technical term, and then you're going to have glue that you need to clean up all the way around there. So not too much glue on the leather, but definitely make sure you have a nice amount on the inside, and then just put them together. Do the same thing on the other side with the glue. Put it in there. This one I've done a few times, so it's going to be a little difficult. You can see I can kind of squeeze it to get it tighter so it'll go in. It's showing off right now because I'm doing this with you. So you get that in on the other side, and then once you have the glue in on both sides, you want to put it down and walk away from it for at least 24 or 48 hours. So I had one of these fail on me. This magnet is pretty strong that is on the cuff. And if you go to pull it apart before it has completely set, that glue, your leather's just gonna pop right out of there. So resist the urge to check it. If you can wait 48 hours, it's gonna be tight. If you go earlier than that, you're going to end up having to re-glue. So learn from me and be very patient with this step. It's the hardest step, I think, of the whole process, is to wait and make sure your glue is fully cured before you go to check it. Okay? I'm so excited to see these finished. They're going to be so awesome. All right. How much do you love bead crochet? I know there's a learning curve with this, but it is so fun to learn something new with you all and get obsessed with something fresh. This is going to sprang right off of your hook. Please let me know if you have any questions. I do plan on doing kits in other colors for Sprang, so you will be seeing those in the future, and I'll make sure to link them below this video when I have them in stock. Ask questions, because I know this is a new one, and I'm happy to give you resources, and I want us all to have success with this new skill. So thank you so much. Happy bead crochet tube making. I normally say happy knitting. That was hard.